So good morning, everyone. We're going to start with Lamrim Kappa Guru Yoga, the hundreds of deities of the land of choice. So I'm going to put it on the screen, and also for the people at home, you can follow through. That's what we do, right? I think so.
Oh yes, that is what we do.
Yeah, I'm a bit, yeah.
So can now you can get some copies for people.
All right, so we'll wait for a second.
Oh, it's going to be on the screen.
Yeah.
Actually, if some of you people who wanted to sit on the ground would come up to these seats, they're not being used, you're quite welcome to come forward. Why don't you come up? Quite welcome to. Don't be shy. So we're on page 7. From the heart of the Saviour, the 100 deities of Geshe on the King of the Palm, assembling in the trunk of the extremely wide region, the King of Dharma, omniscient, omnipotent, come here together. In the sky, the fourth line of consciousness, in my perfect supreme pure and pure, for my mind, that speaks life, behind the answers. For holy mind, the intelligence and understanding of the sense of your holy speech for this excellent your holy body is radiant and beautiful, with glory renowned, and you who are being seen here. Please increase me more with various stars, but the instance of signs such as objects and so forth. Objects are found like objects, but actually arranged by opportunities, supreme. Whatever the number is, bodies, especially those opposite to the true house that I have collected from the kingdom of time. I can taste each and every one with every great of my heart. You strive for much life and practice in this I am grateful because the Saviour is sincerely rejoicing in our existence. Perfect pure Lord, Guru of the building powers, wisdom and compassion. Please let all our reigning up to bound and on my receptacle of those disease and you. Exactly, I say need. May whatever virtue I have collected benefit the teachings of all Christ my brethren. In particular, they have always the perfect pure Lord, forever. Sachi Jesus. By the merits of having offered this mandala to our Muslim countries, may I and our family members and all sentient beings be able to meet, practice, and actualize the teachings of the victorious one Lord Sandra, who had the morality of an eminently pure way of life, was courageous in the extensive conduct of the sons of the victorious ones, and accomplished the yogas of the two stages of supreme peace and emptiness. By the force of having perfectly manifested in this way, all the beings of one mind and vision from the heart of the perfectly one Father and Son, and combining into one vision of my God. Why enter the power of no flow to the open of why I cleansing all my sins and spirit powers, negative powers, obscurations, and their influence without exception. My body becomes as pure and clearer as crystal. And then we turn to page 13 for the midsema. We'll recite 3 times. Mikme se we teshen chen resi, trime kendre wonko jamayam, duku maru shonse samre jar, ganchen tepe sunyan sonkama, rosan chakre shabla soa, mikme se we teshen chen resi, trime kendre wonko jamayam, duku maru shonse samre jar, ganchen tepe sunyan sonkama, rosan chakre shabla soa, mikme se we teshen chen resi, trime kendre wonko jamayam, duku maru shonse samre jar, ganchen tepe sunyan sonkama, rosan chakre shabla soa.
Sangye
Shedam Sangye Chonam Ka Chanchu Pade Jani Kyasuchi Taki Shushi Kipe Sangye Kola Tanchke Sangye Chokar Shu
Sangye
Shedam Sangye Chonam Ka Chanchu Pade Jani Kyasuchi Taki Shushi Kipe Sangye Kola Tanchke Sangye Chokar Shu
Sangye
Chodan Sopi Chodamba Chanchu Padu Dani Kyasuchi Dagi Chushi Ibe Tonamye Chodan Enche
Sangye Drupara Yusho Tangi Tuzenye Zone Tawa Tamje Bambi Chere Tambi Chun Genze Kwatam Kela Chanze Good morning, everyone. Welcome, my sister. Samalaya, the Tamboders, Nanzo, Chakwa Imba, Mancha, the big house was.
So the restriction levels are being lifted off, and this is the first time that we have more people hearing the teachings. This is the first time that we meet again. A lot of old friends and also new faces, and Geshe is happy to see all of you.
In the Nanzo, the Mintun, and Yar Man Zom Tuyagi, Javadam, Manam Yes.
And Geshe is hoping that from this point onward, we'll be able to do it better and better, right? So we'll be on the mend to do it better and better, to be able to continue to meet each other and have more and more people that join us together for this study of this topic. Up to 50 people.
Actually,
Sorry?
only 20.
Only 20 at the moment. Okay. Yeah.
And Toxin Chingo, the red was the Lombo Casacale, Chippy, and Suchi, two Catula, the Karina Kushungi, and the Lamrim, the Shizongi, Roina, and Tembuchagros, and the Dolia, Chile Suchi, Tambana, and the Kamachimu Chede, and G. You almost see what matters.
Well, we also need to keep in mind that we still need to be careful in our interactions with others. We still need to follow the government's directions. We still need to protect ourselves and others, particularly when we think of coming together here in a place like that. It's not impossible that again we'll have a second wave of coronavirus, and if by meeting here together in this place will be a source of great infection, it would be really unfortunate, right? It would be a bit of a problem. So Geshe is encouraging all of us to still make sure that we are careful, that we protect ourselves and that we protect others. So we are on the last leg of completing the Garden of Enlightenment. So we have Uncle Gary with us today. And also, he's been working together with Uncle Colin. So we are about to complete the Garden of Enlightenment, and Geshe was thinking of having a consecration ceremony and inauguration ceremony of the whole garden. So it's going to be, if in looking for an auspicious and good day to do it, is honest the Dalai Lama's birthday is coming up. It's going to be on July 6th. I think it's going to be Monday. So Geshe thought that since this is a really good date, really auspicious date, then this is when we're going to inaugurate the garden. So it will mark the completion of a lot of hard work, different people that have contributed, not only financially, but also the good time and effort.
Yeah.
Did I say the Garden of Enlightenment?
Yes.
All right.
Yesterday too.
And yesterday too. All right. So the Nalanda Master Garden, there are obviously a lot of gardens around here. So have we completed the Garden of Enlightenment by the way? Sorry? All right, you can include that. All right, so the Nalanda Master Garden, I apologize for that. So Uncle Gary and Colin are going to help complete the garden, and we're going to inaugurate the whole shebang.
These are the positive and human that's and the chassis shan. Rodegu Yesra, the Kitchenbuchilla cartoon Slavana, no D Nangolaya, and that's not the Kienchili, and it made the Dunzum chair with it, Benata, Namgidozna, and Yawamichi, Tonga D, Sabji Chishi, Yagadaram Salaya, Chigueres. Neil Tanmingi, Delia, and Dunzum Chituyo Mars, the Nasati King, the Jana, Nasaman Rosa, Dunzum Chituo Mars, the Dinza, the Arina, Yuruma, Casakalaya, and Dunzum Chitu made the touch, Dunzum Chisa, Yashutoji, Ogob Yashutoji, and Nanzum Delia Chagoji, Naran Dilish Tonsons. There's a Dindi Kokopji, Nanzula Madam Mevanza, Nanzu di Kokopji, and Tanzin Chichi, Kokopji Sonchi, and Yawaran Chichi. Tonga Sunzi Chiquetti, vacation which Marangan vacation with Todos.
So, of course, between now and then, we don't know how things are going to work out. We hope that we're still going to be able to meet. After all, the coronavirus situation is still playing out. So hopefully we will be able to meet on July 6th and celebrate His Honour's birthday and also consecrate the Nalanda Master's Garden. So Geshe particularly thinks that this year it's a great effort to try to hold it together, in a sense that all of us have been affected by COVID-19. In India, the situation is still escalating. The biggest celebration usually is held at Dharamsala in India, but obviously they're not going to have big gathering this year in India at Dharamsala. Also looking at communities of Tibetans elsewhere in Europe and the US and so forth, it is likely that also they're not going to be able to hold massive celebrations, but we have an ability to do something about it. So Geshe is hoping, and he thinks it's important that we at least try our best to at least do it here, to play our part in that. Not to mention the situation of Tibetans in Tibet, who have a great wish to be able to take part in such activities and to mark His Holiness the Dalai Lama's birthday. And of course, they're not allowed to do it. You know, they have kind of different restrictions that come together that prevent them from doing that. So from that perspective, Geshe thinks that even more so, we have a great opportunity to do it here. And also when we compare situations to other states in Australia, it seems that Queensland is faring quite well comparing to others. So we have an ability to come together with a lesser sense of risk. So even more so, Geshe feels that it is important to make sure that we do our best, you know, to make that happen.
These are the Ditolia and Nalia Gishi news. The thing any good Tambuji, should get wherever. One thought in Nalia to be rich. The child is not showing Yalani and some of them are time. Sometimes it troubled in the churches and cake chambers and the killing chasers. Beach of the cake, but beach of the kanji, and wants to net of anything Karina. Continue subject and want to cover Lamrim Chini Chigenza, Lamrim Pitsawa deep Lama together. The Chamongo, the Pinjon, the Lama, and the Persu share, Sober Supe, and the Sono Saya, that give chalk jewelry, Zienza, and on Zugi, touch Suzuki Casota. Nendelia, and you know the yards, Lama change and chichi, and Delia, and Kosu to the Piazzi, Chignato Piazzi, or Tinti, the Sobat, Chevana, to so called trouble changing Chevan, then they in Angelia, and so on Kokuchimuch, Chigragus.
So Geshe here is the Geshe Chimeric Institute. So just since in that position, you got the title of the Geshe and also the Geshe here at the center. In that sense, he needs to fulfill his responsibilities, and he needs to do whatever a Geshe needs to do at the center. So he woke up in the morning and he thought of what we need to add to the plan of celebrating His Holiness's birthday. So he made a phone call to one of his friends, commissioned the baking of a massive cake. So we're going to have a cake, birthday cake. Also, Geshe hopes that we will have flowers and other offerings arranged. So we follow here the presentation of the States of the Path of Enlightenment, which is, as the beginning of the text indicates, there is such a great importance that is placed on following a spiritual teacher, relying upon a spiritual teacher, which was also emphasized by the Venerable Maitreya in his writing of the ornaments of clear realizations and the ornament to the Mahayana Sutras. So that being the case, it is also said that the ability of the Lama, the spiritual teacher, to come and to remain with us and continue to teach depends upon merit, right? So we want to create those conducive conditions for the Lamas to be around, to continue to teach us. And for that end, Geshe reckons that in celebrating His Holiness the Dalai Lama's birthday, and also thinking of how we make offerings to a Lama in creating merit for them to stay and continue to guide us. We make offerings in terms of flowers and incense and other beautiful offerings. So it is a great opportunity for creating those avenues for continuing to accumulate the merit.
And these are the ones that the new muscles and to do and Barbara and the deep unit and Geshe and Shucho.
But we still have a couple of weeks before that happens, so Geshe's plan is still rolling, and since we still have 2 more sessions, it will probably give us updates about what's happening and also what we need to do. So stay tuned.
Again, Australia, tomorrow might be shape and then traditions. New people shape and and community
So if we have singers here, performance, and you want to sing something that is unique to Australia, Waltz in Matilda or whatever, Advanced Australia Fair or whatever, you're most welcome to do it. Geshe has contacted the Tibetan community, and we might have one of those members coming to perform Tibetan songs. So stay tuned. Yeah, maybe Serena, you can do a actually miss. You can pair up with Marsha and do a singing.
India,
yeah. Kabi Kushi Kabi Gam.
Slovakia and Kundan.
Slovakian song and dance. If we have a Swiss person, we might have yodeling or something. Maybe.
Yeah. But this is it. Then on the long run, you draw the word. No, don't be any Tibetan monster. Tato meaning here. Any the long run, you go to the on the long run, change the Chanzang to my charge. And got Tampa the layer, Lama Finger, Lama Majesty, in 20 years. The long run with young nature, Lama Major than Jimmy Tommy, and the long run going as motto, long run going to same never is up, and degree to Menga Tidaya and Tsultrim, and got the layer, Lama Majesty. Yeah, Gandala 20 years.
Anyway, since we also have people that join us at home, listen to this teaching. So let's just make sure that all of us are on the same page. So we are studying Lama Tsongkhapa's presentation of the steps of the path to enlightenment. And in so doing, we're following his middling presentation of the Lamrim. Since this is a text that we follow, Geshe also thought that it'd be good to start every session with a recitation of Lama Tsongkhapa Guru Yoga, which is called the Hundreds of Deities of the Land of Joy, which is what we did at the beginning of this session. So let's go back to the text. We've covered already a few pages in the text. I'm going to put the text in front of us. Just somewhere here. So we are looking at an explanation of how teachings possessing the 2 greatnesses should be listened to and explained. So in looking at how to listen, we've looked at thinking about the advantages of listening to the Dhamma. And I think that now we're going to look at developing respect for the Dhamma and those who teach the Dhamma. Let's go down to this section. Actually, it's probably the next one. All right. So then the next point is the actual way to listen. So in the previous session, we looked at indication of how to listen in general. We began with giving up the three folds of a vessel. So those are the topics that we've already spoke of. And today we're going to begin with relying on the six perceptions. So there are six mental attitudes that we should develop. There are contemplating the perception of oneself as a patient, contemplating the perception of the one expounding the Dharma as a doctor, generating the perception of the instructions as medicine, generating the perception of persistent practice as the cure, contemplating the perception of the Tathagata as an excellent being, and finally generating the wish for the Dharma tradition to last long. So many of us have already done some Dhamma studies, but in case there are some people that are new to this tradition and you wonder, what are we talking about? What are the things that we discuss here? If you haven't had much so far, well, the way of practicing the Dhamma, the Buddha Dhamma, is to look at our body, speech, and mind and to recognize that of our body, speech, and mind, the most important thing is our mind. And the role of the Dhamma is to transform the way that we think. So we see that we experience pain and suffering on the mental level. And the main purpose of our engagement with the Dhamma is to remove, to dispel the mental suffering that we experience. So, for example, when we get physically ill, our body, you can say that our body is in a state of, you could say, unhappiness, although it doesn't work like that in English. So you can say that the body is not comfortable. It is not well. Similarly, when we look at the mental pain that we experience, when the mind experiences pain and the mind is unhappy, we can say that this is a mental sickness that we experience.
아니 소소 아니 never the 두시샤바나 아니 우유는 수치야 아 교육이라서 마도지 아니 우리 대부분이니까 나 내가 있으라바이나 제땅을 저단지나 마딩을 해 가시야 아니 우리 대부분이 계란 never 있으라바이나 롱라인을 써봤다 마대와 용을 써 게임 조스기로서 이내야 샘 마대와디 샘라야지 Geshe Kondu Haji the Dinti is sent to the same bit cut in and on the no what is and it sent the message you have what was red was the rock.
we look at these points, the first one is contemplating the perception of oneself as a patient or as a person that is sick. So physically, we might become ill, and then a body is suffering pain. Mentally, we can say that similarly, when we look at the mental states that we experience, it might be that currently our mind is well or our mind is happy, but it takes only some trivial conditions for the mind to be made unhappy, to be unwell. And actually, we go quite often between those perpetual states in which we go from one mental state which is not well to the next, one mental unhappiness to the next mental unhappiness. And it is possible that in between there is some happiness or joy, but still the mind is in that change of flux going between different states. So when we consider the idea of becoming sick, being ill, if currently the body is actually doing quite well, you're not sick physically, you're not ill physically, and yet someone is telling you that you're sick, you're going to find it quite awkward. You're going to wonder what's the deal with that, or what's the go, because currently I feel quite okay. But mental experiences are different to what we experience on a physical level, in the sense that we can recognize more accurately how on a mental level we are constantly going between different mental states, anger and attachment and pride and so forth. And we might find some respite in between those states, but still they affect our mind continuously on a daily basis. So when we adopt that mental attitude, that perception, seeing ourselves as a sick person, this is the thing that we are identifying, that the sickness is those mental states that constantly occur to us, from one moment to the next. So if we know that physically we are ill, we're going to make effort in looking for a cure, for a treatment. Similarly, on a mental level, when we recognize that there are faults that we have in our mind, we will then seek a way to remove those faults, to remedy those faults, to apply a certain process by which we can recover from those faults. And this is the essence of the instruction that we get here in adopting the mental attitude that sees ourselves as a patient or someone that is sick, so that we can do something about our situation. Otherwise, if we think that there's nothing wrong in our current situation, there would be no impetus for correcting our mind, for improving our mind. So the way to be moved to act, to be driven to act, is to first of all recognize that there is something that is not quite right in our mind. There is a certain fault in our mind. If we're going to be able to identify that, then we'll be driven to do something about it. So here we're not saying that we need to correct or to fix something that is not broken. This is not what we say. What we say is that there is something that is happening here on the mental level. So we want to recognize what it is. We want to recognize the faults that are there so that we'll be then be encouraged to correct them. So then using this idea of regarding yourself as a sick person, the sickness is afflictive states of mind, anger, attachment, and ignorance. And we regard them as sickness because they make the mind unhappy. They make the mind unwell. And in that sense, they are a type of mental sickness. Mentally, we want to be happy. Though we seek mental happiness, those states are the states that make the mind unhappy. Is it possible to recover from that mental sickness of the afflictive states of mind? It is possible to do it, but it requires great effort. You need to put certain things into practice and to do it consistently and persistently. So whether you'll be able to recover from those mental faults, mental sickness, would depend upon how much effort you put into your practice. But still, the basic premise of our discussion is that it is possible to do it, that it is possible to recover from that mental sickness. And we can also look at excellent practitioners of the past. So to begin with, we can look at the example of the Buddha, the Bhagavan, but also the many masters, the holy beings, the great beings that came after the Buddha, and find that there are examples of those that were able to recover from that mental sickness. And you might be thinking or saying, and this has actually happened, that we're always giving examples of those people that did it in the past. Do we have current examples of people that were able to do it? Forget about the past. What about the present? Can it be done? Well, I guess the reckons that if you look at those who practice Dharma at the moment, you can find those that have done it for some time, that were able to use their Dharma training in order to create this space in the mind, to make the mind become vast and spacious, to make it at peace, to make it more at ease. Even when they're faced with certain difficulties, as far as day-to-day needs and necessities, foods and clothes and house and so forth, there might be some issues happening there, and yet still mentally, a practitioner is dealing with that situation with a vast and spacious state of mind. You can find examples of those people that were able to use those trainings in order to engender that open state of mind.
빌라 초고 상도 샘이 배시 ngakiro 이게다스만 상나나 그래서 님이 거란비 스토지 이 기존의 텔판 조여서 인산 나노라야 지금 병원도 다 아니 간지 차단 처리비 미창즈의 차단 처리 두드스 라이메 되나 먼저 들어와이나 아니 선박기들이 선박파까지 대신 아니 나파카의 상도 있으라.
So, for example, Geshe reckons that looking at his experience in his life, being able to, first of all, coming from a background that is not well off at all, but then being able to train in the Dharma for many years, Geshe reckons that comparatively, his state of mind is, he thinks that it's quite relaxed, quite vast and spacious. It's quite happy. It's not to say, he's not saying that our situation is bad, that kind of our mental state is bad, but he says that just looking at the training that he had, he thinks that he was able to actually implement it to create a happy state of mind.
아니 지금 장관하고 중간에 지금 직대로 담을 소원들이 같이 두들게 아니 소소 장 상을 담는 저자 뒤까지 냐치는 그런 상치가 있어.
Geshe said that he is not a drinker, right? So he doesn't drink, he doesn't take drugs. He was able in his lifetime to meet the teachings through very kind spiritual teachers, having relied upon very kind spiritual teachers, having access to the teachings of the great master, Lamrim Kappa. Geshe find that, at least in his mind, they bring only happiness.
신선한다 아니 생긴 나서지 project 設計 종자 設計있는 야지 야담바 아니 장마장의 차이여가 노르데여가 소버디 무유 아니 이기다 냠용 토니 용기어레스 인자다 남조기 인지기 생명이야지 가디는 마키로 용게디 치기 유치고 게마이바 수수 생명 차단 모습이 자치기여가디 아니 무엔즈 투바이나 아니 딜리 토야기 탑디 아니 딱지 때문에 좀 되는 진짜 중간에 보는 거 그 기억을 한번 보시다 탑 신지 말아봐 탑 신지 말아봐 땡이거든요 딜리야 잠바치와 땡데 아니 근데 토르투고 그랬어.
So we recognize our current situation. We have those states that bring about that mental unhappiness, but we can reduce them. We can come at the end to completely eliminate them, to overcome this mental sickness. Often we become outwardly oriented in dealing with our situations, blaming our unhappiness in external conditions or on external conditions. So here, when we recognize ourselves as being sick, and we also recognize that there's something that can be done in relation to that, we recognize that it's not the blame of external conditions. The blame is within our own afflictive states of mind, anger, attachment, and so forth. And it is possible to follow a path that reduces them and comes to the end completely remove them. This method for doing that was unmistakably taught by the Buddha, the Bhagavan, and by great masters such as Lamrim Kappa.
어디다 담은이 준주에 탐을 내기 따봐야 매명하신 자고냐 여자라 소유되는 내기 따고 민주의 세송을 따라서 요즘 수요가와 동료차고 이게 내 차선 유무도 있다 나와 있는데 될 때문에 체크 그랬어. 까마버로 도저히 까마비살이 저는 맨나 대들 공부는 신주로 되었어. 동순비 종이 지금 때문에 나도 신주 채워라. 여기 나올 이 맛이 소스.
In looking at the text, it says, contemplating the perception of oneself as a patient. We begin with a quotation from Shantideva's engaging in the Bodhisattva behavior. It says, even when stricken with ordinary illness, one has to follow the words of a doctor. How much more so if 100 ills like desire afflict you perpetually? As it is mentioned here, owing to the mental afflictions such as attachment, we always suffer from ills causing long-lasting and severe suffering that is difficult to cure. Therefore, we first need to diagnose them as such. Kamawa said, it is not in accord with the actual situation. Our meditation goes off in the wrong direction. We have been stricken with the chronic illness of the 3 poisons. The illness is very grave, but we do not know we are ill at all.
타만 내기 따라서 타만인데 거의 딱지 아니 리그 나사 나와라 리그 나사 좋아라야 maybe 나신 자고리 maybe 나신 자고다 내가 개버지기 딱지 아니 나시 자고라서 이내야 땅한지 maybe 라바 나신 지야를 참고 깔레도 왔어 maybe 라바 나신 maybe 세상 나신 제고 좀 성장 카보다 내 난신기다 좀 된디 소바 난신지 그 라면 따야래야 카고 빼야겠어. 좋아. 나신 까까래야 좀 된디 소바 난신지 좀은 타마는 까래야 지 소수 내제 나와래 경치무지 라도 상승기 아 선내 디빌레이도 왔어. 네 난신기 지다 지 멘비기 랍소도 치고 좀 간다치 않아 상승하지. 난지 디비 서거다서 상승들이 이거다서라.
The first quotation in that section came from Shantideva's Guide to Bodhisattva Way of Life. It says, even when stricken with ordinary illness, in the sense that even when you're physically sick, one has to follow the words of a doctor. How much more so if 100 ills like desire afflict you perpetually? So it works quite well, Geshe feels. You become sick physically and you go to see a doctor. And your physicians might tell you what you need to do, but sometimes you still find it difficult to follow the instructions of your physician. You think, how will I be able to manage that? How will I be able to do that? You know that they're giving you valid advice, but still you find that applying the advice, applying the treatment is going to be quite difficult. So even more so when we think of also being sick, meaning that our sickness is afflictive emotions, attachment, and so forth. And there is a treatment for that. And applying the treatment is not going to be easy. Just like sometimes following a physician's advice is not easy. Well, if the doctor, if the physician is kind-hearted, then sometimes they go easy on you. Not today, though. Sorry. Bring out the stick.
좀 된디 소만 난신지 왜래야 무슨래 담보래 카고 열대야 이 조트와는 다 경자원입니다 내가 디자시 가다 버렸어
Geshe said that he has got an actual experience with seeing how difficult it is to follow the doctor's advice to the letter. Right? So it is difficult. So also it would be difficult to follow the Bhagavan's instruction also in that way, but nonetheless, there are no faults in those instructions. One of Geshe's friends became sick and he went to see a doctor. He thought of getting different advices. He went to see 4 doctors and he got 4 different advices.
Did you touch on it?
4 different advice, I should say. No, if it's like that, it's quite hard to pick which advice you're going to follow, right?
The Kashi Pedi Karangi, Nimut Chiglia, Kabinisia, Susa Chipi, Longa, Javgoris. Amjikashi Dilaga. Amjikashi Pedi, and Kapshu shoes Tangoris, Lada. That does someone could kill him by now. Basically, the rest of those I have.
So you got 4 different advice from 4 physicians. One of them said that you'll have to get the needle twice a day over a period of 5 years. Another one said that there is another treatment, but it's going to be pretty aggressive. So there is no need to get an injection with something that is quite aggressive, that is going to make him quite sick for some time. So taking all those different advice on board and trying to do all of them together would have probably meant that he would stay alive only for a week if he did all of that. However, Geshe said that if he were to follow the advice of his very skilled doctor, then Geshe feels that there would be no problems whatsoever. He's going to be able to proceed with that for many years to come. Go easy on him. In Tibet and in India for a long time, a tradition of using traditional natural medicine has developed. So even in the writing of Nagarjuna, a great Indian master that lived about 2,000 years ago, there's a description of medicinal texts that he composed. So it's likely that one of the most serious illnesses that Nagarjuna dealt with or was treating was leprosy. So he composed a couple of manuals of natural medicine, not the chemical compounds that we have available today, but natural medicine combining different things in order to alleviate the pain of leprosy. Tibetan medicine looks at the body as a combination of 3 elements. There is bile, phlegm, and wind energy. And illnesses that arise in the realm of the body, the sphere of the body, are attributed to imbalance created within the 3, wind energy, bile, and phlegm. Also, it is related to the 4 elements. So altogether, Tibetan medicine is dealing with the elements of the body and deals with those imbalances. Anyway, Geshe said that he doesn't know a lot about Tibetan medicine, so maybe we'll suffice with that.
The other the baby in the that long in Natsatan, long in Natsachi, any Kasa, Changwe Natsa. The zoo Tolaya, and Chilu Membe, and Membe Kumbulesa, and then Comunis, and long Natsa, and Chilu Membe, long Natsa, the Munzinche, the Kawi, the baby mention and pay any caption the silver switch and Unguaris, long Natsa, sent Gap, the sent two bear sober, in the real to Zuliachi, injured and the buck, the Mamu voice.
So in Tibetan medicine, one imbalance is attributed to the disruption in the wind energy. And there are certain symptoms that arise when that occurs. Geshe heard that in terms of conventional medicine, we don't have a lot of discussion about those conditions attributed to imbalance in the wind element, and also there's not much available treatment. But in Tibetan medicine, there's quite a lot that you find about different conditions attributed to the wind energy or imbalance, sickness of the wind. Like, for example, when the mind becomes either depressed or it becomes hyper, it goes out of balance and so forth. There are also some physical, there's also a physical basis for that, and therefore Tibetan medicine also offers a treatment for that. So in Tibetan, the word that is used for that is lung, or sickness related to lung. Meaning of lung is wind energy.
That and even if it's not long killer sobi, long killer sobi, let's support Tabana, never cable to get the channel, Gawachi, just means that really that's long to the thinking as a sobi. Any Johnny can be imagined, we never saw. That member cable the channel, maybe you touch longer Gary or Mary, any such chili or Mary, loving it's all ten. Any Lanson Canada, Nasa Joan, two shots in there, and Suzuki, so nonsense in Lavanta, Gatorchim should give us.
The second point is contemplating the perception of the one expounding the Dhamma as a doctor. It says, by way of analogy, if we are stricken with a serious illness such as a wind or gall, a bile disease, we look for an expert physician. And meeting one, we are extremely happy. Listen to what he or she says, treat them with respect and serve them. In Tibetan medicine, you might go to see a doctor. Right? So when you see a Tibetan doctor, they first of all check your pulse. The system of diagnosis is based on different aspects of the pulse. So there's no X-ray or blood test and so forth. The main way of diagnosing what you have is to looking at different aspects of the pulse. So they read your pulse, and then they tell you what the problem, what is the imbalance, and so forth. And Tibetans normally feel very grateful to a doctor. They're very happy with the advice that they get from a doctor.
아니 라트에서 이거 말았는데 두스 아베 차고서 두조 아니 당하고 이거 차고 됐어.
It says, in the same way, one looks for spiritual guides teaching the Dhamma, and having found one, accomplishes what it says, taking it not as a burden, but as an ornament, acting with respect and reverence towards him. So, just as you go to see a doctor, the doctor diagnoses what you have, tells you what you need to do, tell you the type of medication that you need to take, the lifestyle that you should have that accords with your situation, and you feel grateful for that doctor. You feel happy that you got an advice that will be helpful in recovering from your condition. Similarly, here, when we look at our condition, our mind has been affected by anger, attachment, and ignorance, and it has been under the sway of those afflictive states of mind since time without beginning and up until now. So we get that diagnosis. We come to recognize those states of mind, and our mind is not hidden to us. If we start to look at our mind, we'll be able to recognize the degree to which we are affected by those afflictive states of mind. So if we don't recognize those states, we're not going to have the wish to do something about them. If you don't recognize your problem, you're not going to be motivated to do something about it. So if we're not going to recognize that we are affected by afflictive states of mind, we're not going to be open to listen to those instructions. We're not going to be open to follow those instructions. So this is the quintessential instruction here with respect to the mental attitude that we adopt. We see ourselves as a sick person so that we'd be motivated to do something about it. First of all, to listen to the instructions. Let's look at the third mental attitude that you adopt. Generating the perception of the instructions as medicine. Just as a patient greatly appreciates the medicine put together by the doctor, you should regard the instructions and precepts taught by someone expounding the Dhamma as the most important thing, and then make an effort to hold them in respect rather than wasting them through forgetfulness and the like.
And Carson's Nasa Cora, and Geshe said the Musu and Sam Truyenza, but did you go over us? But it's all deep, and Chan Chanju Sam again. And Tower Denjong Toby, and Sheriff of Penny, and Jutsu Gurumba, Deconaries, Deconaries, is a big Tower Denjong, Muyu, Tower Denjong, but the and Suzuki Samuel Raj Chavana, any Kukanda to Tomarina, and many number check here. What Chadang Chononki, sound the Mondoyachi, known to the others. And it's somebody Ninji, some of the other, and Yan Dinashin, Chadan Chori Mayimba, and Rangi Sende Mayimba, Kanji, and Chitso Konayachi, Yagan with their Mayimba, and Sulayana.
So we follow the Buddha, the Bhagavan, Buddha Shakyamuni, who we consider as our teacher. We recognize that mentally we're sick. Our sickness is anger, attachment, and the like. And this is what we want to recover from. So how do we do that? How do we recover from the mental sickness of afflictive states of mind? We do that through the treatment of loving kindness and compassion, bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment, in combination with wisdom, the wisdom of dependent origination. These are the only methods for recovering from the sickness of mental affliction. So we develop an understanding of the different levels of dependent origination. And through developing an understanding of the different subtleties of dependent origination, we develop the wisdom that can well distinguish between what is right and what is wrong, what is correct, what is incorrect. And when we do that, then we do no longer become partial or remain partial with respect to dealing with others. So we do no longer work with others on the basis of attachment to someone and anger for others. We do not seek to be victorious over others or to act in a way that is done at the expense of others. We do not follow the divisions and the rifts within our community, but we develop an attitude that seeks to be of benefit to everyone.
and Penanganzu Samaya, Mariba Shuchi only, Mumba Shuchi only, and non to Mishibi only, non to Mamu Yungas. The Nanshi and Dasha Leondi, Ko Gasa Jilia, Gabor the Yami, he could be Magasaji Yungas, Kanji, and Chori Samudi, and Shuchi Shuji, Lame words. Magasaji Levi Jilia, Madiva Jungudas. So Magasaji, your Sergilea, and Samanaya, Madivaji, Madishi, Yajana. The Nazi with that home to your another Telegram bed, and Luma is so true there. Don't call a Mawasha there, so the Jungudas.
So many of you are acquainted with those points, and Geshe still takes the time to repeat them, because here we first of all follow the presentation of the states of the path to enlightenment, the Lamrim. It is possible that some of you might not have heard a lot about it, and you might be wondering, what are we talking about? So Geshe sometimes from time to time, it takes the time to go back to those topics and reinforce that understanding that currently we have ignorance operating in a mind stream. And because of ignorance, because of that unknowingness, we end up making mistakes, many mistakes. Like, for example, looking at our afflictive states of mind. We have attachment to some, and when we come across those that we're attached to, there is that mental happiness or joy that might come up. But if we are attached to some, it is almost guaranteed that we'll have aversion to others or a sense of animosity towards others. Because of attachment, at some point also animosity or hatred, anger arise, which means that a mind is affected by partiality, but it is affected by this divisive partiality. And when you come across those that you dislike, first of all, there is that sense of unhappiness or discomfort that arises in your mind. And it can also take a stronger manifestation of anger or hatred, where not only your mind is strongly agitated, and then other afflictive states of mind strongly operate within your mind stream, but also often it has physical manifestation, which are uncomfortable physical manifestations.
To be nearly 20, 7 years, one summer, and there were the cheap building by the sofa, and cheap year, and your country, and co energy, relation somebody in Bachi, and 2 years. He told the Zambala, and Sheriff T. Turkey, Chawa Karicheva, and no to Mashova, and Chavadi, and Chandange that. Never the too much on drawing and Kadu nothing government was in gross. Then I sing Gita, Pena Ninji, only Gita, 7 inches to the set, Yovana, and someone do not endeavor the devil, the chief. So come and Donga Mountain, 냠비기 참을 찍기를 영어만 좀 있지만 냠비기 저기 참을로 여봐이나 아니 차단 처리 제재니 아니 이빠라들이야 다가 수수 출되고야 매교지 오윤의 수단 저기도 왔어.
If we have wisdom that realizes emptiness, a wisdom that understands reality, the way that things exist, then with that wisdom we can recognize that we are all the same in seeking happiness and not wanting to experience suffering. We might look different to each other, but still, when we look at our motives, we can see that we are all equal in seeking happiness and not wanting pain and suffering. So if we can recognize that reality, that way of existence, then our activities, the actions that we take will not become distorted. They will not be mistaken. They will be completely in agreement with reality. And in acting on the basis of understanding that reality, will not come to regret our actions. So not only we develop wisdom, but we also develop loving kindness and great compassion, recognizing the equality of all of us and wanting happiness and not seeking suffering. So when we develop loving kindness and compassion, we think, may all those living beings that are just the same as me, may all of them have happiness. May none of them suffer. Through that, we reduce that divisive partiality of anger and attachment, which means that we are less susceptible to the distortions and disturbances which are brought forth through the divisive attitude, the partial attitude of anger and attachment.
예, 이 토리야, 아니 잔주고 쌤이세요. 와, 탐지를야지 핸들 좀 통해. 아니 매지 지고 양비다. 너도 잔주고 쌤이 초도레스 김치 지어봐이나 아니 소소라야. 너도 내려봤어. 와, 아니 집가나 가지 쳐봐이나. 동네 지투야기. 아니 리발리비아레스. 이지기 아니 강가 동네 지투바나 아니 강가 가르치 쳐봐이나. 강가도 추운 아니 춘준지 마도 아니 친구 설고 말았어. 그 딘지가 써봐. 아니 샘 캐주디 아니 투모마인 같이 그런 캐주시야레스.
And on top of that, we also take up the mind of enlightenment, bodhicitta. So if you develop bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment, which is seeking to get benefit and happiness for the sake of all sentient beings, you might become courageous. It becomes courageous, it becomes determined. So you willingly embrace, you willingly take up whatever hardship or problems come your way when you're motivated by the wish to give everyone happiness and benefit. And it makes your ability to deal with difficulties much greater. Abilities that disturb you become quite small. Difficulties that disturb you become quite small, they become quite trivial. Your mind is no longer swayed heavily by difficulties that you encounter.
Tamari Nelly Torgona, and that maybe and Larson Chago and Shingi, new with Nelly Torgona, same with Nelly Torgona, and Chemo, the majority that Kalansi, it's in Rogoyabi,
If in order to recover from an ordinary illness, you need to follow your physician's advice. Likewise, in order to recover from mental illness, we need to follow the advice of the teacher, the Buddha, the Bhagavan, and put it into practice in a way that accords with the instructions. So what is the essence of the teachings that our teacher gave? Well, he said that do not blame others for your problems. Do not blame others, but say that the problem is within your own afflictive states of mind. So create a distance yourself from afflictive states of mind and cherish other living beings. This is the essence of the Buddhist teaching.
네, 랑기 샘디 차당기 상황기 마셔봐이나 지리 남규단 게임 간다지 쳐봐이나 디디 아니 샘래야 아니 동하트야다 샘기 시대 트라이디 싸우니 연구여서 말이지. 그 간지 소수 샘기 아니 라완도 모습 참마비기 아니 미모투상 파셔봐이나 아니 지 게임 간다지 좀봐이나 디디 아니 샘래 디기티 투비여서 말이지. So,
or in a nutshell, if your mind is not under the control of anger, attachment, and ignorance, whatever external condition you might encounter, they will not take away that mental ease, that mental unhappiness, mental happiness. They would not make you unhappy. Whereas if your mind is controlled by anger, attachment, and the like, you might have those perfect external conditions. Internally, you will still be unhappy and disturbed. So we might leave the text here for now. Geshe says, thank you very much. If you have any questions. So Shannon says, how does one deal with burning out when trying to follow the advice or be of service? Dila samsam nyamnen chegi labjati nyamnen chebe kapsulaya yaman chuzo gi tundala 내가 호타 바타 된 채워나 samsam bet sempuso vachane be tan chegero wa de kabdela 가르치는 것 약설이스, 가져오레스.
지당 원주기 그 당분이 수술 내가 가르치는 수술 컨트롤이 아니 삼반남다 치고 상상하지. 와 수술 컨트롤이 삼반남다 치고 딱 맞추는 수술 맞추는 데려야지 아니 여백이야다 수도해야지 여말에 수술 미치도에 리버면서 딘디지 샘 여바이나 같이 내가 가르쳐봐야 돼.
Well, Geshe reckons that to begin with, you need to recognize what you can do and what you cannot do. So with respect to the things that you can do, you think that I'm going to do it to my best ability and be genuine about it. Now, you also need to be able to recognize your inability to do a particular thing. When you think that this is not something, if you recognize that this is not something that you can do, don't put don't put pressure on yourself. Don't become stressed about it, because there is no point in being uptight about things that you're incapable of doing. So Geshe reckons that this is at least the way that he's trying to deal with his own affairs, right? Recognize what he can do, what he cannot do. Do what you can with a genuine approach, and don't be stressed out about what you currently cannot do. Well, sometimes when you work for a Buddhist center, you might be thinking that, you might take up a job and think of, I'm doing this job because there's something that I want to get out of it. So it might be some salary, but it might be also some other things. You think that I'm going to do it because that's going to be the profit that I get from working for a Buddhist center. Or you might be doing a particular job at the center and think that I need to do it in this way because otherwise people are going to criticize me. They're going to create problems for me. They're going to criticize me if I'm not going to do this or I'm going to do it in a different way. So you might be taking up a job at a Buddhist center and still in terms of your attitude, it's not going to be completely genuine. So Geshe reckons that if you think, I'm going to do a particular job for the sake of the Dharma, I'm going to do it in order to offer service to a Buddhist center, and try to engender this motivation as pure as you can, that would be a good way to move forward. Take it up and move forward.
이제 님마도 지금 같이 랑된지 기체도 아니 내가 제발만 안 주조 in the mind 개발합니다. 갈 내가 제발만 아니 부스터가 사야지 왔어.
Otherwise, if your motivation is seeking your own welfare, then it doesn't really matter if you work for a Buddhist center or work for another place. It's going to be the same motivation that is still interested in your own welfare. Have you got some other questions? All right, so there is a question here. When we see someone close to us with anger and mental afflictions, how can this be best dealt with when they are not recognizing this within? Sansan soso ipingya lega chesadi la michik konjo shukchenbo 혼에다는 담임다 치기로와 이거 고난초 konjo di 무슨 책이 말해서 갑자기 가르치는 것을
다른 갑들이야 소수 공부 마사지 소수 샘비 만추게 제가 기치지로 왔어. 맞아. 이 파쇼미 샘비야 원주문이 당진 책투에지 요마로 왔어. 소수 샘비 앤 소수 라고려자 대리야 당진 책 기치지로 왔어. 파쇼미 뭐 찾지 니는 소수 뭐 찾아봐요.
The most important thing is to prevent our mind from becoming angry. We don't have a lot of effect on somebody else's mind. It's not that we can take care of somebody else's mind and prevent them from becoming angry. But what we can protect is our own mind. So if you respond to someone becoming angry with yourself becoming angry as well, it is just like someone becoming crazy and replying to that or responding to that, you also go crazy yourself. So this is certainly not a conducive way to deal with your situation. So the most important thing, Geshe feels, is that even though someone might be angry, first and foremost, you need to make sure that your mind does not become angry. We sometimes respond to somebody else's behavior, saying that they're such a bad person, they're so negative and so forth. So when we look closely into that, is it that that body language or the physical behavior is negative? Is it that the way that they speak is negative? When we start to look into that, we can also then look at ourselves and check whether we're acting in a similar way or are we doing things differently? Because often when you start to break it down, you see that actually you're acting in a way that is not that different to the other person. So if you criticize another person, just take a look at yourself, and often you come to see that you have similar traits. So what's the point then in just criticizing others and not looking at yourself?
콘도들이야 상했다. 딘데서 주로 가주스 마기로 치기도 소소라니 가주 마기로 차기도 로버 가주스 마기로 차기도 넘버 거랑에 가주스 추야를 깨지 인지 콘도 상로 니미가야 뒤긴데 상로 주거나 아니 콘도 이야기 게임 체험이 뒷간 거 체험이 아니 니바지 용토 서비스 마도 뒤긴데 콘도를 상체 마당지 아니 콘도 수치는 딱 간스가 버스라고 가야 탈시 뜻이 요마스다.
And also we need to take into consideration that we have been affected by anger since some without beginning and not until now, and therefore we have great acquaintance with anger. And since we're so used to anger, it's not going to be easy at all to put a stop to that. It's not an easy feat at all. In order to be able to do it, we first of all need to recognize anger in our own mind stream, but also recognize the detrimental effects of anger. How is anger making me unhappy? How much unhappiness it brings to the people around me, to the people that are close to my heart, and how many problems does my country or the place that I live in experience because of anger. So through that, you get a sense of how detrimental anger is, to the point in which when conditions for the arisal of anger are met, when you see that they are there, you have a better ability to put a stop to anger because you recognize how anger is so detrimental. If you don't think about it like that, and you have that expectation that you'll be able to stop anger just when it arises, it's going to be a false expectation. If you do not prepare yourself before that, through thinking about those issues over time, when you're going to encounter a challenging situation, it is likely that you're not going to be able to put a stop to anger. So, Alan, you still have another question, but since we're out of time, then bring it up at the next session, and Geshe will take that question to begin with. So, thank you. We'll leave it here for now. I'll put the dedication prayers on the screen. Sancho Rinpoche, Nakye Panan Kegluchi, Kyewana Pame Paina, Ronde Kondo Bawashu, Yukata Lama Sangye Kukine, Doa Chikyama Lupa, Lei Salago Pashu, Kowe Shinkandu, Pendan Dewa Malu Jongwayane, Chenre Siwan Tenzin Yatso, Shabe Sike Bardu Tenguru, Sa Shi Chan Du Yawe, Ten Zi Yon Yawe, Cho Song Ko We Me Man, A Ja So Du Shi Gon, Shakti. Thank you. So Venerable Churki is going to do teachings in the Discovering Buddhism module on transforming problems this weekend from 9 to 12. 8 verses for training the mind. So if you want to join the DB course, I think that you're most welcome. I'm inviting people to somebody else's party, basically. So so you're most welcome to gate crush the party. And that's it. Happy Friday.
The folks here, cafe is open for coffee and cake. You've got one with you or just catch up. I think people want to catch up.
Coffee and cake for the cafe. Hi, Sarah. Sarah is coming up tomorrow. Okay.
Yeah, I will see it.
Hasta mañana.
Hasta mañana, sí. Sí, nos vemos.
Ah, ok. Hasta de la tarde.
Hasta la tarde, sí. Muy bien. Gracias.
De nada. Vaya con Dios.
Point break.